like you say, I mean, it wasn't just a popular movie. It was just a ridiculously explosive pop culture moment.
Right.
I mean, at one point, someone said, "Stick your head in the theater." I said, "Well, I've seen it." They said, "No, you can't believe it," because this is about 3 or 4 months into the run. And I stuck my head in, and there were beach balls, big giant going around. It was more like a party, where they were. It was almost like Rocky Horror. They knew to answer back. They had their favorite moments. I mean, it was astonishing to me, and I don't know how they knew before. To give you an example, the day that it opened, which was May 25th of '77. We were working on the sound mix for the 70 millimeter prints were already in the theaters, but they were working on the sound for the 35 millimeter prints. And I said, the car picked me up and I said, "Can you go buy Grauman's Chinese? Because the movie's playing," and nobody could decide on a poster. There was big arguments over what would convey what this movie was about. Was it heavy and deep and intellectual like 2001, or was Little Rascals in Outer Space? I mean, there was a great to and fro in terms of how to promote it. And the upshot is that there was no agreement. We didn't get a poster until I don't want. There's probably fans that know better than me, but certainly not by opening day. And I don't know whether it took a week or a month before eventually I think they came up with a Hildebrand poster with the guy that looked like Luke's, uncle, with a fantastic physique and 6'4", But again, so there was that back and forth about how to promote it. So we drove by the theater, and to my amazement, there were lines around the block. And I couldn't figure out how that could be. There was a trailer that was playing. Carrie and I stuck our head. We said to the guy, in Westwood, I said, "We're in this movie that's coming out in about a month." I mean, can you imagine?
It's kind of a weird space movie.
We said it's called Star Wars, and we heard you're showing the trailer. We just want to see the trailer, and we don't want to have to bother anybody, and we don't really want to. He let us go in. I didn't ID us or anything. I don't know. He said, "Go ahead." So we stuck our head in. I still remember too, because we'd never seen any footage at that point. Well, the stuff we ADR'd and so forth, we'd seen footage. So I take that back. But my point is, in terms of effects and all of this, and I don't know if you remember this, somewhere in space, it could all be happening. They're coming in too fast. Intercut with this slow sort of message, and they come to the end of the message. More fast cutting of assault on the Death Star, and shots of the Wookiee with his headphones, which is just showing that to an audience with no sort of explanation.
And honestly, in '77,
yeah,
where people just aren't used to seeing.
Yeah,
that
when they
kind
say
of
science
thing.
fiction, they go, "Oh, is it like 2001?" You go, "Yeah." Rather than try and explain it, I mean, there was Planet of the Apes. I mean, there's certain things I guess you could sort of wedge in there, but even that's not a good example because they don't think of it really as a space movie.
Well, it's also it was the action element, like there was such an action element to it. 2001, great movie, not a lot of action, not a lot of action,
and not a lot of laughs.
Right.
So, although the computer turning on the human, I mean, that appealed to me. But
Pretty
I have
funny.
a weird sense of
That
humor.
part's pretty funny.
No, but to finish this particular story, we see this trailer. Somewhere in space it could all be happening. And then it says, 1 billion light years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer. And there's a huge explosion. And then somebody called out from the back of the theater, "Yeah, and it's coming to late night TV about a week after that." And Carrie and I just looked at each other like, it was funny. He got a really good laugh, one of those, audience.
But yeah, I wish you could have tracked that guy down a month later. You're like,
well, based
how
on
come
what,
it's not on TV yet, asshole?
Based on what he had just seen, there was no way in his mind that could have been a successful movie. It was just too goofy. And they didn't really. I don't think they really singled out Sir Alec. which is a major component just in its credibility and getting financing and so forth. A technique they later used with Marlon Brando in Superman to give it sort of a gravitas that it wouldn't ordinarily have had with mostly unknowns or all unknowns. But again, I don't know how these people. Some people say, well, the reason there was lines around the block on the very first day is there's a core audience of people that will go see fantasy and science fiction films no matter what. But like I say, I don't remember any ads on Saturday Night Live. I certainly don't remember any ads on TV. There might have been a newspaper ad, but there were no posters, and they did have stapled up lobby cards. But like I say, it was one of those things that it's always, because at the time I remember saying, this thing will be popular. I think it'll be as popular as the original Planet of the Apes. I was one of the people that said, I really think this has all the elements. I said, even if it doesn't do really well at the box office, it's going to be a cult movie, meaning college kids are going to come to midnight screenings and love it because of the humor, because the robots were so funny, and the cynicism of the Han Solo character and the gravitas of Sir Alec, and just all of it. I said it's more a fairy tale than it is traditional science fiction. We got a farm boy and a wizard and a pirate and and a princess. It's really seems to me that it has a great a chance for crossover appeal, because they do all these studies, and they said, well, women don't like science fiction. In fact, they wanted to take the word wars out of the title. 20th Century Fox. They had a name the movie contest while we were shooting it on the bulletin board. If you could come up with a name that was better than Star Wars, because they had all these focus groups that say, 30% of people that polled with that title think it's a behind-the-scenes look at the Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton marriage. Seriously. And I kept thinking, well, what would be a better title? Because the first time I ever read a script, it was called, The Adventures of Luke Skywalker as taken from the Journal of the Wills, Saga number 1, The Star Wars. That was the title.
Surprised they didn't stick with that long.
Well, is there a longer title? A funny thing happened on the way to the
maybe
forum. How to succeed in business without really trying. But the long and the short of it was, nobody came up with a title that, because a lot of people tried. I tried. I can't remember what I came up with. But nobody actually ever came up with a title they liked better than that. But that was the story all over. I remember George went to McDonald's. He got turned down, so we got Burger King. And he went to Mattel Toys. We got turned down, so we got Kenner. We were everybody's second choice.
Such an interesting, just that whole idea. Of course, that story is a classic story. They're like, merchandising rights. Well, who cares?
I know. Isn't that amazing?
Never happened.
And I don't understand, because when I read it, I said, oh my God, this thing's a toy box.
So when you're making this movie, and my girlfriend's dad worked on Star Wars, and he did the special effects for it, and so John Dykstra, and so for him, he just said, we were just hanging out making stuff in a warehouse. We had no idea that when you're shooting this, like you said, maybe it'll be a cult hit. What was some of the feeling from the other cast members? Did they're like, after this maybe I'll go do theater or whatever? Like, what was their feeling?
Well, I don't know if I really got a feel for their take on it. I do know, shooting it in England where there's no real reference point, they had Dan Dare and Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Most of them thought that it was going to be a strictly for children, shown only in matinees, because they had, again, no reference point. They were very amiable about it, but they were also, well, it is a bit of rubbish. Don't you think? It really is so very.
Are you hearing that, BAFTA?
But also, too, they had a great sense of humor, because they'd pick up on these lines. And I remember the boom guy. Every time we do a take, I'd look up at him, and he'd give me one of these. And he would love, he'd be walking around, you'd hear him muttering, "We're all going to Alderaan, all of us, mate." I'm going to Alderaan. Are you going to Alderaan? I am. Fucking A, I'm going to Alderaan. Because they pick up on, and then it'd be hard to say. I said, "Will you stop doing that? Because, we're not finished with the scene. I still have to say, but I want to go to Alderaan." You're gonna make me laugh, because there's so many unusual terms. I mean, just the fact that he was called a Wookiee. They couldn't get over that. And then somebody made the mistake of, there was a typo and it was typed out as Obi-Wan Key, which was WAN-KI. Well, WANK, that's enough. Yes. And we're like, what is that? Does that mean something here that it doesn't mean in the States? But it was all in good fun, like I say. And there was a real bonding that went on when we went to North Africa and then came back to London. And I made a point of really trying to visit people's houses and go for Sunday dinner. The two guys, Jack Purvis and Kenny Baker, were in a group called the Mini-Tones. And I thought, I'd really love to see what modern day vaudeville. I mean, it was still a living, breathing occupation in those days. And they said, "Well, all right, you can come along. Keep your mouth shut so people don't know you're a Yank, and we'll let you." We did, you do like a family club in the afternoon, and then you do a nightclub at night. I really love to get I mean, my son was born when we did Empire in our firstborn. My wife's here somewhere tonight, but he was born in St. John's Wood in London. So I've always had, and even before I went to England, I loved the Ealing comedies. I loved Peter Sellers and the Goons and Monty Python and the Beatles. Come on, the Stones. I mean, there's so much to love about British culture, and then to go there and work there, you get to see the country in a way you wouldn't if you were just a tourist in London.
Yeah.